Okay guys, we're going to be working on page 6 through page 9. And on page 6, we just have basic multiplication of fractions. Alright, so instead of just taking these and adding them across on both the numerator and the denominator, I'm just going to go ahead and reduce to lowest terms. So then I don't have to add as much or divide as much. So I have a 2 and a 2. 2 goes into 2 one time, so that gives me a 1 on top and a 1 on bottom. And then 3 goes into 3 one time, so 1 on top and 1 on bottom. So then I just add or multiply the top, the little dots, they mean multiply. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 1 times 4 is 4. And that is your answer. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to skip down and do number 4. It's a little bit more complicated, but it does have the same process. So I'm going to look up here in my numerator, and I'm going to see what in my numerator will divide into my denominator. So I have a 3 and a 9. 3 goes into 9 3 times, so 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 3 divided by 9 is 3. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to see what else I have. I have another 3 here, but then I have an 8, a 5, and a 4. Well, 3 doesn't go into any of those evenly. And then I have a 2, and 2 goes into both 8 and into 4. So it's just your preference which one you would want to do. There's really no wrong way to do it, but just for me, I'm going to do the 2 and the 8 just because I like to deal with small numbers. So I would rather this be a 4 than an 8. And then my last numerator is a 1. So when you're looking at your numerator, you have a 1, a 3, a 1, and a 1. And in your denominator, you have a 4, a 5, a 3, and a 4. So your numerator is going to be 3. And your denominator is going to be 4 times 5, which is 20. 20, 4 times 5, which is 20. Okay, and then 20 times 3, which is going to give me 60. And then 60 times 4, which is going to give me, oh, not 120, 240. Okay, 4 times 0 is 0, and 4 times 6 is 24. All right, so this right here is not in lowest terms, so that's not my final answer. 3 will go into 240, and how many times? Well, I'm going to say that it'll go into 240 80 times, because 3 goes into 24 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24, and then 3 goes into 0 0 times. So just writing it out here so that you can see what I did in my head. 3 goes into 24 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. Subtract. 24 minus 24 is 0. Bring down your 0. 3 goes into 0 0 times. And then to check that, I would just do 80 times 3 and 0 4 2. Okay, so I'm sorry, not 80. 1 over 80 is my final answer. Okay, 3 goes into 3 one time. 3 goes into 240 80 times. Your answer is 1 over 80. Okay, and then jumping down to number 7. This is where we're starting to deal with some letters. Don't let letters panic you. You're just going to do the same process. So because this C, X, and this DX are multiplied, that's C times X and D times X, you can cancel those X's. X goes into X one time, okay? Or actually it's X to the first minus 1. So because this is an understood 1 and an understood 1, which equals X0, and anything to the 0 power is 1. So basically, those cancel. And the y's are going to cancel. And that's just going to leave me with c over d. All right, so this is the only one that I did with letters. So if that's confusing to you, you'll have to let me know. But it's just straightforward. We did this in the last books as well. So let's move on over to page 7. So this is going back into factoring your trinomials and your binomials and noticing when something is a perfect square and noticing when something is a difference of two binomials. All of that is going to benefit you very much in this section. So if you did not understand that, now is the time to really dig in and really pay attention to what you're doing and why you're doing it, because it's very important in this section and even over on page 9 and 10 as well. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out this trinomial here. Okay, so I have an a square in the front and a b square in the back. My second sign is a positive, so I know that my signs are going to be the same. My first sign is positive, so I know that both of my signs are going to be positive. Okay? And when you factor b, all there is b. When you factor a, all there is a. So that one was easy. And then that is over a. That looks like a 9. A. Okay? So then I'm going to factor my second one. Bring the b over. And that's going to factor into 2. And this right here is a difference of two binomials. I know that because I can square the first, or square root the first and square root the second. And then they're separated by a negative sign. So that tells me that they are a difference. If it was separated by a positive sign, it would not be a difference of two binomials. All right, so my signs are opposite. I have an A and an A and a B and a B. Okay, so from here I can cancel. And I have an A plus B on the top and an A plus B on the bottom. And that's all that I have that will cancel. A minus B and A plus B, they do not cancel because the signs are different. The letters are the same, but the signs are different. So they are not the same. They cannot cancel. So my final answer is going to be B times parentheses A plus B over A times parentheses A minus B. Final answer. Okay. So we're going to skip on down and move over to page 8, and we're going to do number 4. We're going to see what we can do with this one, okay? So again, the first thing that you should notice about this is that number 1, you can take the square root of both of these numbers. They are both perfect squares. X times X and 4 times 4. The next thing that you should notice is that they're separated by a negative sign. So therefore, this is a difference of two binomials. So when I factor this, I just factor it exactly like I just wrote it up here. X minus 4, X plus 4. We're going to put that over the 7. Brought my 7 over. And then times, I'm going to bring my 21 over. And then I have x squared plus x minus 12. So now I have to factor out this trinomial. So what are factors of 12? 1 and 12 and 3 and 4. Okay. The next thing I'm going to look at is what are my signs. Well, I have a negative sign here. So that tells me that my signs are going to be opposite. If this were a positive, then your signs would be the same. But it's a negative, so your signs are different. So I have a negative and I have a positive. The next thing that I need to do is find out which one of these factors of 12, when subtracted, will give me a positive 1. Well, obviously 12 minus 1 is not 1. So it's going to be the 4 and the 3. So then you need to decide which one needs to be positive and which one needs to be negative. Since I have a positive sign here, my bigger number needs to be positive. So I'm going to put my 4 beside my plus sign and my 3 beside my minus sign, and then I'm just going to throw the x's there in the front. Okay, so from here we can start canceling. I have an x plus 4 in the bottom and an x plus 4 in the top. So those are going to cancel. And then I have a 21 and a 7. Well, 7 goes into 7 one time, and 7 goes into 21 3 times. So I'm going to reduce those. And then I'm just going to multiply and combine this for my final answer. So x minus 4 times 3 is just 3 times, parentheses, x minus 4, over, just have a 1 on the bottom, and then an x minus 3. And that is your final answer. Okay. I know some of you have probably already looked at number 5 and was like, oh, I can't do this one. But it is the same way. You do the exact same thing. All right, so one way that you can do this is you can solve this one, and then when you get the answer to this one and this one, then just multiply it by that one. You can do it as 2 separate problems, and you can still come out with the same answer. Either way works. It is just up to you. If you need it to look smaller, then separate it out. If not, then just go ahead and do all of it. One of the negatives about separating it out is you could forget to go back in and multiply by that third term there. So it might be better to just go ahead and do the whole thing. But again, completely up to you, however your brain works. All right, so in my first one, I'm going to factor out that b. It's what's common in both of them, and it's going to give me b, parentheses, a minus 1, and that's going to be over 3b. And then I'm multiplying, and I'm going to factor out the trinomial here. So my second sign is positive. That tells me that both signs are the same. My first sign is positive, so that tells me that both signs are positive. The only factors of a are, or a squared, are a. And the only factors of 1 is 1. If I were to do the full method with this, I would end up with this answer again. All right, and then on the bottom, notice that you could take the square root of that, and you could take the square root of that, and it's separated by a negative sign. So therefore, that is a difference of 2 binomials. So a plus 1 and a minus 1. And then multiplied by b squared over a plus 1. All right, so slow down for just a second, just to kind of get your brain to wrap around everything that we just did, because I know that that was a lot. So the first thing I did was I factored my a, b minus b. And I got factored out my b. ab divided by b just leaves me with a. And then this negative b, brought my negative sign down. And b divided by b is 1. So I brought my 1. Okay. A minus 1. And then I just brought down my 3b because there was nothing else to do with it. I factored out my second trinomial. And I got a plus 1 times a plus 1. And then I factored out the difference of 2 binomials. And I got a plus 1 times a minus 1. And then I brought down my last one. There's nothing to factor there. So now I'm going to start canceling out where I can cancel, okay? So I have an a minus 1 on top over here in my first one. So do I have an a minus 1 on the bottom? I do. So I'm going to cancel both of those out. They go away. Then I have an a plus 1 in my second section. And I have an a plus 1 on the bottom, so I'm going to cancel those. They're going to go away. And then I have another a plus 1 and another a plus 1. So they're going to cancel. All right. So the only thing that I have left is this b square right here. And I have this b. And then in the denominator, the only thing I have is this 3b. So how do I factor that? Well, or how do I divide that and cancel? This b will cancel this b. That leaves me with a b squared in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. So those cannot cancel. So that leaves me with b squared over 3. And that is the final answer. So I know that that problem was a lot, but it was basically doing the same thing that you had been doing. It just added a third section in there. All right, so moving on to page 9. So now it's decided that it's going to add in a division sign there. So what do you do about that? Well, for the first one, if I was using a calculator, I would just put it in the calculator and write my answer down. But I'm not using a calculator. I'm doing this by hand. And you should too. Don't whip out your calculator. So what you do when you have this division sign right here, to change that to multiplication, all you have to do is flip this last problem. So when I do that, it's going to give me 2 over 3 times 4 over 3 times 9 over 12. Notice all I did was put the denominator in the numerator and the numerator in the denominator. I just flipped it over. And that's all that you have to do. Alright, so now I'm going to cancel and see what I can do from here. So here I've got 3 and a 9. So I'm going to cancel those. 3 goes into 3 one time. And 3 goes into 9 3 times. Well, now I have another 3 here. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel those. Okay. And then I have a 4 and a 12. So I'm going to cancel those. 4 goes into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 12 3 times. So 2 times 1 times 1, and 1 times 1 times 3. That gives me 2 over 3. Final answer. Okay, so we're basically doing the same thing. It's just threw in this division sign just for fun, because math likes to trick you up a little bit. But don't panic. It's very simple. Okay, so now let's do this again. This is the same process of what we just did over on page 7 and 8. It's the exact same thing. We just have to flip the last problem before we start. That's it. And it's the one that is on the right side of that division sign. That is the one that you flip. All right, so let's factor out. All right, so I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to factor it. So the first thing that you notice is square root of that, separated by a negative sign. So this is a difference of 2 binomials. So a minus b over times a plus b. And then over what's common between a squared minus ab. And that is a. So I'm going to have a times a minus b, because a squared divided by a leaves me with a, and ab divided by a leaves me with b. All right, so then times back in my numerator on the second section, and the common factor between these is going to be 2a. So I'm going to factor out a 2a. When I do, 2a squared divided by 2a is a. And 2a divided by 2a is 1. Bring down my negative. And that's going to be over a minus 1. All right, so here I got to flip that over. So times a squared is now on top, and a plus b is now on bottom. So from here, I just cancel my like terms. All right, so I have an a minus b on the bottom and an a minus b on the top. So I'm going to cancel those. I have an a plus b here in the first one and an a plus b in the last one. In the second one, I have an a minus 1 and an a minus 1. So all I have left on the bottom is this a. And then I have a 2a here and an a squared here. Well, the a with the 2a and the a on bottom will cancel. And that leaves me with the 2 and the a squared. So my answer is 2a squared. All right, and then number 6, and this one will be our last one. And you should be able to do the rest of those on your own. So I just have to rewrite it. It's just two term, or it's a binomial. So I just flip the second one, the one that's to the right of the division sign. So I have x to the 5th over y squared times y to the 3rd over x to the 6th. Okay. So now I'm just going to look and I'm going to see I have a to the 5th on top and I'm x to the 5th on top and x to the 6th on bottom. All right, so x to the 5th divided by x to the 5th is 1, and x to the 6th divided by x to the 5th leaves me with x, because x 6 minus 5 equals x to the 1st, which is that right there. Okay, so then I have a y to the 3rd and a y to the 2nd. The one on bottom will go away. The one on top will just become y. So my answer is y over x. Final answer. Let me know if you have any questions.